Hello, guys. Welcome to the Screwjob Effect. And we had something we wanted to do for a long time. We have some suggestions from our friends. It is something called What If. So, a series of what ifs, and we're going to theorize different directions, different ideas. We have an ECW one we want to do eventually. We want to do some maybe of the storylines we want to do, but this one in particular was the one that people were most interested in. Dan in particular was the most interested in. It's what if WCW never closed, and how we would go about rebuilding it. We're gonna have two different things. I'm gonna let Dan talk, and then I'll come in after he's done. And then, so the first part will be him, then it'll be me, and then we'll come together at the end for the last portion of it. But basically, it's gonna be like, who will be the buyer of it? What channel is it gonna be on? Because we can't do anything related to Time Warner. They're done with wrestling, out of it, and we can't do anything that WWF was on. They're out too. So who could possibly be potentially stepping up in that position, and who potentially could be the owners? Dan and I both have similar but still different ones on that one, and we have some ideas of who might be on the roster and who we would probably send away to greener pastures. Some of them deserve to be in greener pastures. You mean like Dwayne Bruce and M.I. Smooth don't need contracts?
Huge erection? No, like, come on.
So I'm going to pass it off to Dan. He can swing in this chair and let him do his thing.
All right. Let you get out of my way first. There you go. Thanks. So, I'm going to start off with like a bit of a retrospective on WCW just because, like, just so people know like what it was and kind of a bit of a history behind it. So story would kind of start in 1988 when Jim Crockett Promotions was kind of in a bad spot, and Ted Turner, a big media mogul, owner of TBS, kind of came in. He was a big wrestling fan. Said, "Hey, well, let's buy this out." So they purchased the Jim Crockett Promotions, then a subsidiary of the NWA, back in 1988. Those initially was called the Universal Wrestling Corporation, quickly changed its name to World Championship Wrestling, or WCW as we would all know it. So, in the beginning, WCW would fall under the NWA banner, using the NWA World Heavyweight title to boost stars boost established stars such as Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Nature Boy Ric Flair, Sting, among others. After a dispute over the NWA title in the summer of 1993, WCW would opt to withdraw from the NWA, becoming its own entity in the process. Around this same time, a new executive would rise to take charge of WCW by the name of Eric Bischoff. Bischoff sought to push WCW to a higher level, radically changing the image of what used to be known as a Southern wrestling company. They lured top stars away from the WWF like Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, among many others. Two notable names on this list would be Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Their debuts would then lead towards the beginning of the New World Order, or the NWO as many people would know it. After bringing in Hulk Hogan as their third man, and one of the biggest, most famous events in wrestling history, the WCW would kind of experience quite a bit of a boom, and really wrestling as a whole would kind of experience a boom period. So WCW saw massive success during this period, even with their flagship show Nitro, even defeating WWF's show Raw in the Nielsen TV ratings 83 weeks in a row, which is unprecedented. However, by 1999, the wheels kind of started to fall off a little bit. Kind of started with the infamous Finger Poke of Doom incident, which happened on January 4th, 1999, which kind of started the downfall of WCW. They never defeated Raw in the ratings ever again after that. But and then they would make more mistakes as time went on, hiring Vince Russo in the fall of 1999 to run their creative, which ran creative into the ground, really. Thank God he were not. I'm 99% certain that neither of us are using him in this timeline. Um, then in 2000, their TV deal pretty much went bust when AOL and Time Warner merged in March of 2000, which kind of killed their TV deal because they didn't want because Time Warner didn't want to be in wrestling anymore. They didn't want it, so WCW no longer had a TV deal. So when they kind of felt like the writing was on the wall by March of 2001, like they were pretty much done. And in reality, they sold their stock to their all of their assets to the WWF for a very meager sum, and then WWF kind of became the only game in town. So what my vision kind of is so like the question is like what if WCW did not close their doors in 2001 and instead choosing to rebuild their brand and kind of build themselves back up as a major wrestling entity again. So first off, they'd probably still be sold. Can't imagine them not being sold. So they would still have been sold. But the question is who takes ownership. In my opinion, I discussing this with you, Mike. We had a bit of the same kind of opinion, but different in a way. Um, I said that both Jeff and Jerry Jarrett, much like they did with TNA in 2002, I said Jeff and Jerry Jarrett would buy out WCW, but very similar to how like what kind of happened in 1983 when Vince McMahon bought the WWF from his dad. Um, like WCW would have a few other guys in there that would have stakes and ownership that would kind of help things along. The names I use for that are Ric Flair. I use Dusty Rhodes, and I use Larry Zbyszko. Those three, the Jarretts would have known them for many years at this point. We're all very big stalwarts in WCW, NWA, and have been in the business for many years at this point. So all of these guys will have a stake in ownership. So now they need to find a TV deal because without a TV deal, there's not really a whole lot they can do. Um, Fox was a big sports network at the time. They wanted to broadcast wrestling. Kind of had to do a process of elimination because couldn't use Spike TV or because Spike TV was TNN at the time and TNN was being used to broadcast WWF Raw, so you couldn't really do that. Couldn't really go with NBC either because NBC was good friends with Vince McMahon, so that's probably not going to work. Um, so Fox is a good option, at least to start. Maybe they can go down and use Spike TV later on, kind of like TNA did. But alternatively, you could maybe think about going to ABC or ESPN, but I feel like they were more in the market for what they might call actual sports. Um, anyway, so now who are you going to use as your booker? You're not going to use Vince Russo. It's not going to happen. I'm very sure of that. It's not going to be Vince Russo. Because
Sergeant AWOL.
I don't want to use Vince Russo whatsoever here. Not going to happen. Ran creative into the ground, so we're going to get rid of him right away. I did think about Jim Cornette.
How about Ed Ferrara?
Ed Ferrara's cut from the same cloth, so no thanks.
Okay.
I thought about Jim Cornette just because, like, has a mind for the business. I think he could do it, but his mind for the business is too old school for my liking. I think it's too old. Like, it's 2001, not 1985, so I don't think it really I don't think it would work for what we're trying to do. I think a good idea for a booker, at least to start, would be Eric Bischoff. And I know Bischoff's quite controversial. I know he has a lot of animosity with what would be one of the owners, Ric Flair. But I kind of feel like if like I kind of feel that Flair and Bischoff could do the business that they need to if they have guys like Dusty there, like Dusty and Larry Zbyszko and others. They're kind of acting as like in the middle kind of thing. So next question is what would the roster look like? So you already had quite a lot of established names at this point, like a lot of guys like that I'm gonna keep around, such as Ric Flair and Sting. Ric Flair being one of the owners, so I'm gonna keep him around, obviously. You got Sting, you got Scott Steiner, you have Booker T, you have Jeff Jarrett, you have Goldberg. That's kind of like your main event to start off, at least, because they're established guys. They've been around for many years. They've kind of like they're all pretty much all former or current world champions. Booker T is your current world heavyweight champion. So, and at the time they would have had a lot of like young and up and coming guys such as like Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman and Chavo Guerrero, Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, Chuck Palumbo, among many other guys. They also had a lot of like younger rookies in their system, like you mentioned Elix Skipper. He was a pretty good one. AJ Styles was there, and in their power plant at the time would actually have been John Cena. So figured have John Cena come out. John Cena could debut. Maybe he uses the rap gimmick in WCW instead of using it in WWE. Um, in the next like year or so, you could bring in a lot of guys that would later go on to either be in real life would later go on to be in either TNA, Ring of Honor, stuff like that. Such as Samoa Joe, you got Low Key, Bryan Danielson, Christopher Daniels, Mark and Jay Briscoe, you got Ron Killings, you got Austin Creed, who would later be Xavier Woods. You have CM Punk as well, who was in Ring of Honor back in 2002, would later make appearances in TNA in 2004. Also thought about Eddie Guerrero as well, because in 2001, around this time period, shortly after WrestleMania X7, he would leave the WWF and would kind of and would not come back for about a year. So maybe he comes to WCW, comes back under new ownership, under new booking committee, kind of and rejoins his nephew. Maybe they form Los Guerreros. Maybe they don't. Maybe you just see what there are a lot of possibilities you could do with that. So I decided to keep Thunder around as a second TV show just because why not? Maybe I mean
Why not?
I know you're laughing at me, but you already had these two shows, so maybe Fox keeps them both. Who knows? If that let's just say, in my opinion, let's just say they keep them both. So I got I got two commentary teams, one for each show. So I kept Tony Schiavone for Nitro, and I kept Scott Hudson as well. I thought like not a horrible name, serviceable, could do the job if he needed to. So Thunder would go to Mike Tenay, who was WCW's color guy at the time, and I would bring in Don West just because like he was part of NWA at the time. He was honestly brought a lot of energy to every broadcast he was a part of. So I love to have Don West a part of it. Keep Jeremy Borash around. Keep Jeremy Borash as a backstage guy. They had him. I think he was running their like online stuff at the time. Mm-hmm. So you keep JB around as their backstage interviewer. You mentioned Gene Okerlund. I actually really like that idea, keeping Gene Okerlund around. And then you keep Dave Penzer as your ring announcer. So kind of like you've got the beginnings, the basis of your relaunch really. I think that WCW now getting a new TV deal with Fox, I feel like they should and would opt for a new look, Kind of like they have a new logo, a new modernized set design, all of that sort of thing. Um, Now Booker T at this point in time would be both the world champion and the U.S. champion, so I'm actually going to take the U.S. championship off of him. And you kind of have like this is kind of like what the on TV product would look like. You kind of have first episode you kind of you see your new set and everything. You get I think you would get a what would be nice to get would be a good U.S. championship title tournament, just because you're going to take the title off of Booker T, who on the quote unquote last episode of Nitro would have unified the belt with the world title, but we'll crown a new U.S. champion. I think be kind of cool have like the finals of this tournament go down to Jeff Jarrett, who's one of the owners, versus a rookie by the name of AJ Styles, who I mentioned earlier on, and then in a good like crowd pleasing moment, you at the end of the show you have AJ Styles pull out the upset over Jeff Jarrett in an excellent match, becomes your U.S. champion, absolutely starts off a really good push that'll push him in a main event status later on down the line. So you kind of like you also have like your I've also meant to talk about the tag division as well. But you have groups like the Briscoe brothers, like I mentioned, that would be coming in. You still have guys like the Filthy Animals, would be Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman, and I think Conan was part of that too. You still have 3 Count. I kept the Perfect Event. The Misfits in Action as well. Um, if you really want to include Disco Inferno, you go with the you go with the Boogie Nights
You
tag
fucking
team.
kept him. You kept Disco Inferno.
I thought the Dancing Fools were fun. Him and Alex Wright were fun. It was funny.
At that point, I'd rather keep Clark and Adams, but you go ahead. You go ahead.
Hey, well, you could also keep Chronic as well. I thought of a really funny tag team just because I wanted to, and Mike, I told you about this one before, but it's Ron Killings, kind of revamping his rap gimmick that he used, hip hop gimmick that he used in WWF was K Quick, and using it to tag with John Cena, who would later use that same rap gimmick. And they would wage war with 3 Count, who were like they would wage war with 3 Count because it's pop versus rap and it's fun. Why not?
Do they have a music showdown?
Yes.
They have a music spot like a pay-per-view?
It'll be just like the Filthy Animals versus like Mr. Perfect's group that was like Rap is Crap, because Rap is Crap, that was a fantastic song. Stop it. Anyway, I think so. I kind of went a little bit more in depth than Mike wanted.
You could add some more if you want. It's totally fine. If you
So I'm gonna add a little bit more, just kind of like looking a brief summary of like looking ahead after that. So you get guys like AJ Styles, like John Cena, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and a few others that I named. They all rise to main event status in the coming years. I said that Kurt Angle still has his dispute with the WWE in 2006, leading to him signing in WCW, which would inject a massive shot in the arm for their main event picture. Um, Maybe other guys defect from the WWE, like Jeff Hardy and Christian Cage, like they did in real life. Um, Also debuting because his father is part of the ownership group, have Cody Rhodes debut, have him team up with his brother. That would be interesting. Um, Later on down the line, you get guys like Tyler Black, aka Seth Rollins, Kevin Steen, Sami Zayn, Nick Aldis, John Moxley, maybe even Kenny Omega, all coming in because my whole goal here is that WCW is established as kind of the North American like hotbed for in-ring work. Like WWE's your entertainment thing, whereas WCW is all about in-ring. So you get all your indie darlings coming in. Later on, maybe they sign a deal with New Japan, kind of like AEW did, like AEW has, and like TNA did at one point too. You bring in guys like Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, maybe even a younger Shinsuke Nakamura. Bring them in. Maybe even other like Bullet Club members like Finn Balor
Yeah,
could
Prince
come,
Devitt. Yeah.
like he could come in as well. Um, but I feel like this is like maybe that's looking a bit too far ahead, but it's pretty much kind of what I have here for what I would think could happen if WCW never closed its doors in 2001. So I'm now going to let Mike do his thing.